So by now, you guys know that I really like KrisAnne Hall. Number one, the research I studied, she's pretty much right on cue. And it just makes it easier for me to kind of describe a little bit more of the Constitution. Alright, so this one, I agree with her a lot. However, she kind of avoids the one serious thing that attorneys, the British attorneys, went across the United States and actually burned courthouses down while they was burning our Capitol building down. And because in the United States, we are not supposed to have titles. A lawyer is a title. Alright? Sir is a title. Ma'am is a title. But in the United States, we're not supposed to have all these things. They are subjects. Alright? So, it's a good history lesson on one part of it. Okay? It's not the whole part, which you can't do within X amount of videos, right? So I just want to kind of go into that a little bit. This is Diesel Fool with People News. I'm not an attorney. Don't care to be an attorney. I don't want to dumb myself down. I want to get smarter and wiser and not go the other direction. I never look just straight forward. I always look around me for the outside forces may want to commit harm upon me. And I want to be able to protect myself by any means necessary. Alrighty, this video is just a learning video, mainly because I had to say it, but still a learning video no matter what. Alright, take it as you wish. Subscribe to KrisAnne Hall. Here you go.
JC, to learn about the little unknown, unseen things that actually happened. Remember, those of you who've been long-time listeners, long-time watchers, you know that my historical journey really began with the reading of two books, Founding Brothers in 1776. And 1776 caught my eye because of the many events that happened in the favor of our troops that seemed rather more of
extraordinary,
supernatural, right? And so, the damage to the Capitol building and the buildings around the Capitol, although yes, were severe because of the fire. The British troops, 4,500 British troops, trying to burn the War Department, the White House, the Capitol building, and other buildings.
Yeah, that's the thing. Let's not brush over the fact that that's the parallel that they're trying to draw.
Yes, absolutely.
Of trying to, hint that this is somehow similar to that attack in 1814. In 1814, you're talking about a 26-hour siege.
Yes, where buildings were just about razed to the ground.
The Capitol building.
Yeah.
The Senate building.
The
Library of Congress were set ablaze. The War Department. Several other.
Did you say the White House?
Yes, the White House. Several other federal buildings. James Madison literally fled for his life. The Capitol was completely abandoned practically by the government, by leadership. 4,500 British soldiers, right? Hardened British soldiers. Sieged.
Washington, D.C.
And set the Capitol ablaze, set the White House ablaze.
So according to Reuters, 45 foreign troops occupying Washington, D.C.
4,500.
That's what I meant. 4,500 foreign troops. Because at this time, they're foreign.
Sure.
Because we're not British anymore.
Correct.
4,500 foreign troops occupying Washington, D.C., burning down the Capitol building, the White House, the War Department, and other federal buildings is almost what you saw on January 6th.
Right.
Almost.
People trespassing
Trespassing.
taking selfies as they walked in between the velvet ropes through the Capitol.
As they were invited in by Capitol Police
Selfies sitting behind the desk.
of Nancy Pelosi's desk.
Right. So, and admittedly, people broke some windows and some furniture. So this to the DNC PR arm,
Right.
aka the mainstream media, is somehow equivalent to the 1814 26-hour siege by 4,500 British
Foreign
troops
troops.
who set fire to at least half a dozen of federal buildings. In fact, I think it was the Senate wing was described by one of the American leaders, colonels, I believe, as nothing but lime rock,
Yeah.
total destruction, and turned the marble columns into lime rock.
Yeah.
So this is the parallel they try to draw in their propaganda machine.
Which is the vision, can I mention to you, that many people who listen to this narrative actually have. The people who do not actually pay attention to the facts, who just simply listen to the narrative over and over again, who have no desire to think on their own, or maybe no ability to think on their own, actually, if you question them, I guarantee you they will describe an event that is similar to 1814. Because that's the event, that's the way that the people in mainstream media and all of those in Washington, D.C. want this to be portrayed. Not just simply, and let's just be very clear, they're not building up this false narrative or this not so real narrative, like your not so real flag, because they hate Donald Trump. You have to understand the big picture here. They're
Broader than
building
that.
up this narrative so they can lock down Washington, D.C., and they can keep people out of Washington, D.C., keep people outside of government, and then inflict a tyrannical police state on the rest of America. That's the goal.
Right.
That is absolutely the goal. And that is not conspiracy, guys. That's following the dots of all the law that has already been in place and the laws that they are trying to put forward now.
Yeah, and so then that's the summary and background. But you were about to point out the supernatural events,
Yeah.
even connected with the siege and burning of Washington in 1814.
So in 1814, the 4,500 troops have occupied Washington, D.C. They've set the White House, the Capitol building, the War Department, all these federal buildings on fire.
That people were said to be watching the flames from 50 miles away.
Yes.
By the way, to give you the idea of the level of destruction and violence that they're trying to parallel.
Yeah.
Seeing the flames from 50 miles away.
I just have to laugh because they saw the flames from 50 miles away, and from 5 blocks away, you would have never known what was going on January 6th. Sorry, I just need to amuse myself.
So suddenly, in the midst of
Yes.
flaming Washington,
Suddenly, now those of you know this, suddenly, one of the most powerful hurricanes that has ever been seen at that time in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area slams into Washington, D.C.
and the British forces.
and the British forces. And massive amounts of rain drop in Washington, D.C.,
Put the fires
put out most of the fires. And then, on top of this massive coincidental hurricane that spontaneously erupts,
divine fire extinguisher.
a divine fire extinguisher, there is a huge tornado that happens to cut right through the British line of 4,500 troops that decimates the troops, actually does more damage, more death, more destruction to the British troops. This spontaneous tornado does more damage to the British troops' supplies and lives than through the entire Battle of the War of 1812.
So they end up retreating after being battered by this sudden
By a
hurricane
hurricane,
and tornado and massive deluge of rain that put the fire out. So that's how that siege turned out. So pretty amazing story. So
And if you read the book 1776 by David McCullough, you will see time and time and time again where critical shifts in power and in morale and in position occur because of these coincidental divine weather things. I mean, they're weather things,
Yep.
you know?
So that's the burning of Washington in the War of 1812. It,
I want to pause it right there, right quick. So when you really look in history, and it don't matter in what part of the history, weather always had some type of cause and effect to the war when it happened. It don't matter if it was World War One, World War Two, the Civil War, the 1814 War, the 1776, the Independence War, all through there. Weather always has some type of cause and effect to win or lose the situation.
you can search that on the internet. I mean, all that information is fully available. It's a fairly famous event in the War of 1812. It's funny, the War of 1812 is referred to as the Forgotten War. It's really probably one of the most impactful events in American history as far as American identity.
It's only called the Forgotten War by us, and it's only called the War of 1812 by us. The people who fought in that war called it the Second War for Independence.
Yeah.
Because it was the war that put the period on the end of our sentence of independence.
Right.
Because the eruption of the War of 1812 was due largely in part of the fact that the British were still refusing to recognize our independence. They're battling with Napoleon in a war, and so the British naval ships were capturing our ships offshore and even coming onshore and capturing our men and forcing them to serve in the British Navy to fight Napoleon.
Right.
Because, you're still British subjects. No, we're not. Don't you remember the Treaty of Paris that you guys signed recognizing that we were independent? Oops, sorry, we forgot.
Okay, so the Treaty of Paris. Now, most people get stuck on this, right? What happened there is, yes, there was a Treaty of Peace. However, we still owed King George money. And according to that peace treaty of Paris, we had to pay them back. We had to pay King George back the money. And the troops had to leave right away, which they did not leave until 1791. Which means that treaty itself was no longer a contract, really. And that's the reason why in 1812 or 1814 that the king at that time thought he still had authority over us because he thought we were still British subjects, right? He left the soldiers in the United States until 1791, I believe it was 1791, to break the treaty contract on purpose, so that way he can come back and get his people back in line with the crown. Now, we hear all these fancy things, and we hear that we are United States of America and all that. Our true time of freedom was really 1876 or 1776, and I believe 9 years was actually when we was the most free country during that time. After that, all these things started coming in play. and on the list of the Constitution, and how the Federalists and the Federal was debating in Congress how to do these and that, right? And left some things for some type of government control, right? Now, it wasn't supposed to go as far as it did now, but it left it open to do so, right? But the main part of this was the simple fact that we, in all actuality, according to the treaty, alright, we were still British subjects because of the treaty was null and void because we did not pay King George back and the troops did not leave right away. They stayed until 1891 or 1791. So therefore the treaty was actually null and void. And now she don't talk about that part, and I really wish I could sit down and talk to her about this and maybe get a little bit different insight on this. But this is what I found in that part, right? So she talks about contract law and this and this and this. But if they do not follow through with this treaty as is written, then the treaty is no longer null and void. So between 1791, I believe, and maybe 92, I can't not remember off the top of my head right now, until 1814, we're still king's subjects. Now, what they did in the Constitution, believe it or not, is I think they kind of actually recognized it a little bit. So instead of the United States of America, which belongs to King George, they separated out for the United States. And that's how it became two countries in one. Okay? Yeah, I know this is kind of hard to believe, but this is what they did. Alright? Don't take it 100% upon me, because remember, I don't know all. Right? And the words and understanding is so trickery, but from what I'm gathering, that's the reason why we have so many different names. And remember, and I had to re-evaluate myself on this, but the United U.S. citizen was until 2000, the 14th Amendment. Alright, so that brought another vision in with the countries. Alright, so we got United States of America, then we got United States, and then we got U.S. citizens, which is totally a different thing from everything else that we're talking about. And this is the reason why we have all these caps, small, cap, small, cap, small, right? The United States of America, then you got United States of America. Everything in law has meaning. The dollar bills has the United States of America, all in caps. But on the president's choppers and the plane and all that is United States of America, not the United States of America. So there's a reason for that, because in law, words matter, right? Our original text of the Constitution is the United States. Alright? So, and they do a lot of twisting and turning in there. Now, I apologize for taking so long. Let's proceed forward.
I'm gonna have to shoot this out again.
Yeah, and also, besides putting the period on the end of, our Declaration of Independence, it also really solidified solidarity as the American nation, as a country, as America. The country was really still very divided, very, very fragmented, very factional. And so the War of 1812, because then you had, just something about the way that went down, and even people that were even the anti-war demonstrators, such as Francis Scott Key, was totally opposed to what happened. Then he's watching as Fort McHenry gets bombed,
Right.
and they beat the British
Not
back.
just watching,
Yeah.
he's trapped on a ship.
Yeah,
It's
he-
he was
right.
put in a very, very precarious
Correct.
situation.
And
Hey,
so,
Jason,
but that even, even the point is, a guy like that who's totally against all of it, and then suddenly he's proud and he's feeling this swell of nationalism, and he writes the poem. And you got Andrew Jackson about New Orleans, and just this, it really solidified, this sense of we're America. We're all Americans, and we're all in this together. So
Well-
very consequential, probably the most consequential American war in our history.
well, since 1776.
I would say
I mean, you had to have 1776 to get
correct.
there. so,
No question.
yeah.
But in my opinion, this is what sewed, it sewed everything together.
Mhm,
After
right.
1776,
If we
we're
had
really
had that,
still, if we had not went through the War of 1812, there's no telling what would have happened and what
Right.
kind of fracturing would eventually have occurred
right?
had it not been for the War of 1812.
Yeah, no, it definitely did.
Yeah, and just reminders, British attorneys, when they became, wink wink, the United States, well, they're not allowed to have titles. So a bunch of British lawyers went out and burned courthouses down around this time. And all through the United States of things was going on. Mainly to burn records. And later on, as you guys know in history, I believe it was 1861, something like that, when everything really started coming into a head of lawyers being involved in everything. Remember, y'all, the original 13th Amendment was actually telling people that you cannot be a title, right? You cannot be an attorney. You can have counsel, but they also understood that attorneys and counsel was two different things. And today, they're still two different things. They act like they're not. And that's because of the ignorance of the people. But counsels and attorneys are two different things. Even to this day. So, proceed forward, sorry.
It put the period on the end of the sentence, like
It's
I
like
said.
the mortar and the bricks.
It said settle the issue once
Yeah.
and for all.
Absolutely.
Just a little housekeeping, guys. Are you enjoying the show? Do you like it so far? We are a teach show, not a talk show. So go ahead and hit that thumbs up. Go ahead, if you're watching us on one of the channels where you have to subscribe, you can subscribe on Facebook. You can subscribe on Rumble and YouTube and even Twitch, right? Yeah?
Yep.
Subscribe so you can maybe get the notifications, and then share. If you share right now, everybody will get the second half of the show where we're going to actually tell you how the Capitol building has and Capitol grounds have seen violence between January 6th
Yeah.
and the War of 1812, the Second War for Independence. I
That's
looked
going to
up
be
in
my
the-
next question.
Yeah, so the
Okay, so I'm going to stop this video here because I know you guys don't like it long, and we're already going with 23 minutes. So, interesting deal. Probably going to make another one, part 2 of this. But, these will be the people news. History lesson for today, huh? Alright, bye y'all.